Welcome to today's webinar, Microfocus ALM and Quality Center Integration with Automated Testing for Reporting and Analysis. Today's webinar is brought to you by Vivid and sponsored by TaskTop. I am your host and moderator, Chris Trimper. I am the Vivid board member for education. I am the test automation architect at Independent Health in Western New York, and I've had over 10 years of software quality assurance with a large majority of the focus in test automation. I'd like to introduce you to today's speaker. Matt Anger is the Senior Value Stream Architect with TaskTop. He has held QA and testing leadership positions across 7 different industry sectors. At TaskTop, he draws on his 15+ years experience to help organizations optimize value stream networks and identify areas of integration. He's led and architected testing centers of excellence of onshore and offshore. And today in this webinar, he's going to draw on examples and lessons that he's learned over his career to help you avoid a couple of those pitfalls. I know I could avoid some of those too. We got 2 quick housekeeping things. So this is a live webinar, so you can go back and rewatch it. You can send the link to friends, and we encourage you to share the Vivid webinar links. And we have plenty of time for Q&A. So on this next slide, you're going to see a reminder of the webinar control panel. At the lower bottom of it, you're going to see a little box that says type your questions here. And please throughout the webinar enter your questions, and we'll queue them up for answering towards the end of the webinar. So I'd like to hand over to Matt. And Matt, we welcome you today and look forward to hearing all kinds of great things about the integrations and help us learn from the lessons on your journey. Thank you, Matt.
Thanks, Chris. I appreciate the introduction. Welcome, everybody, and thank you for taking the time to join me today as we talk about a few different important topics. The first slide here is really about the rise of test automation. So for the folks on the call today, test automation is really nothing new. It's been around for decades and has been the focal point of conversations at trade shows and among QA practitioners, since I even entered the workforce back in 2002. But now it seems like the agenda has shifted from a nice to have to more of a must have for enterprises that are serious about their digital transformations. And it's no secret that companies need to move faster with product feature enhancements. Customers are waiting, and if you don't deliver that new feature, nothing is stopping them from going over to Google and searching for a competitor that will fit their needs. We live in a world of instant gratification, and the cloud SaaS delivery models of today has made that only worse. What's more is that companies continue to adopt both an agile mindset and implement DevOps practices. Jump over to dice.com. Or look over to LinkedIn and search for DevOps engineer as a job title, or perhaps even search for test automation engineer. The demand is through the roof for these types of practitioners, and it isn't slowing down. If you're in this field, you should feel lucky because you're in high demand now and will continue to be in the future. What we're also seeing, though, is increasingly complex applications with APIs galore. No software application sits alone on an island. Everything is interconnected. From my days back in SAP consulting, this even holds true with internal systems. Through SAP's process integration software, business documents are flowing between internal systems such as invoices, purchase orders, and work requests. Interfacing technology increases the complexity and often makes it more difficult to perform the necessary level of quality assurance and testing. So technology vendors like Microfocus have cornered the complexities around API testing with advancements in their flagship automation tool called Unified Functional Test. So needless to say, test automation is truly a foundational aspect of most testing processes, yet manual testing is still very much alive. With about 40 to 50% of test processes automated, why is that? Well, test automation is simply hard. Just like integrating tools is hard. And even if tools vendors say it's not easy, I tend not to believe them because it's hard. That's the bottom line. And according to the World Quality Report, a key finding from the 2018-2019 study states that low levels of test automation are still holding back quality assurance and testing teams. It's the second half of 2019 and we're still singing the same old sob story about how low levels of test automation are holding us back. It's a sad reality that we've been facing for over a decade now. So how do we get there? How do we break the mold? How do we get past this sob story that everyone keeps harping on? How do we move the needle? Well, according to the experts, we must increase the level of basic and smart test automation, but do so in a smart, phased manner. How much more ambiguous can we be though, right? Sometimes it feels like I'm listening to a politician when I read technology articles online about moving the needle. People talk in platitudes, but don't really provide the specific recipe for how to truly improve. So in my career, I've always subscribed to the mentality of transformation coming through three different perspectives: people, process, and technology. This principle applies to anything, whether it be DevOps transformations or the scaling of Agile throughout an enterprise, or improving the levels of test automation. We need to consider all three components while also looking at how balance between the three is achieved. Let's take a look at a quick example. I'm sure you've seen this type of diagram before. Let's go back here. People, process, and technology happily coexisting and creating harmonious organizational culture that produces results. So if it were only this easy, right? The reality is that we live in an imperfect world of ups and downs, lefts and rights, and 2 steps back and 3 steps ahead. But how do we improve test automation in a smart and phased manner? Well, let's take a look at your program management office. Your PMO office, besides sending memos and coordinating meetings, they love to generate reports. As a longtime advocate and user of Micro Focus Quality Center and ALM myself, I've always been impressed with the dashboard reporting feature of the platform. Most PMOs also appreciate the ability to monitor test planning, design, and execution progress within ALM in real time. These folks are heavily invested in the reporting aspects of this position and enroll within their organization. Truly speaking, that defines their role as a PMO leader. Now let's take a moment to think about your testing processes. Many folks refer to the stages of testing as layers: unit, system, integration, interface, regression, UAT performance, and the list goes on. All of these are different ways of testing or ensuring the quality of your product. Manual testing is a must-have for layers such as user acceptance testing. You want your business users involved, and that's a manual check on the product. But you can automate those quick hit tests for check-ins to Jenkins as an example, and also the critical regression tests that rarely change within your product. You can use tools such as UFT or Tricentis Tosca. What about the technology? Let's just take a closer look at this. There's a lot of vendors to pick from. Gartner lists out the top runners, but perhaps you have an affinity towards UFT, a Micro Focus product, and since you're already using ALM, it makes sense, right? Or maybe your organization just acquired another company and they've been using Tricentis Tosca, but the mother company with all the money is sticking with ALM. To add more complexity, the offshore company you're leveraging to expand test coverage has their own proprietary test automation framework and leverages Selenium. Wow, you can see how the complexity quickly adds up. And this leads us to your tool chain, really the fourth component in any transformational journey. So check it out. In the last 10 years, we've seen so many vendors jockeying for market position in the test automation space. Many of them have been around for a while, but have made power moves to improve their core feature set. Take Micro Focus Unified Functional Test as an example. Do you remember Quick Test Professional, QTP? How about Service Test? How about when UFT evolved by leaps and bounds to encompass both of these tools? They converged while also pushing the envelope on advanced API automated testing techniques. And then there's also Tricentis Tosca. Hasn't been around long in terms of history, but has taken the market by storm. Many organizations are adopting tools like Tricentis Tosca to improve their automated testing. And coming from an SAP testing background myself, I can tell you that their tools are being adopted in droves by SAP-ran organizations. It works and it works well. But consider your organizational setup. You have an offshore team using Selenium while your onshore team uses UFT, and that new business you just acquired is using Tricentis Tosca. Meanwhile, your application development team is using Azure DevOps, and your PMO loves to use ALM for the reporting. How does this all impact your reporting? And that's where we see the problem. If you focus your attention in the middle, you can see a big red X. The impact can be summed up in one word: inefficient. Sure, you can still report on everything across your tool, but is it efficient? No, far from it, and it's very error prone. Does this sound familiar to you? Your VP texts you, how are we ready to release today? Your BA manager calls you, how many reports or how many requirements were covered? While your PMO is wondering how quickly bugs are getting resolved. Meanwhile, your hair's falling out by the day as you focus on how many tests have been executed and passed. You get the picture. So let's take a quick step back and look at the forest through the trees. This is ALM, Micro Focus ALM Quality Center at its core capability. I've used ALM for many years, leading SAP implementations. It's a fantastic platform for requirements management, test planning, design, manual test execution, and bug reporting. But you need to pair it up with another tool for test automation. You could choose UFT, great tool with native integration. You could choose Worksoft. You could use Tosca. You could even use SAP Tau in the past for test automation. Yes, you have options, but the inevitable still faces you. And that inevitable component is, how do I consolidate all of the reporting for my PMO and executive teams? They don't want to see 8 different charts and graphs from different endpoints or systems, and they certainly don't want to guess or ask you for your gut instinct on whether we should go release or whether we shouldn't release. Yeah, qualitative or expert judgment is needed, but the proof is in the pudding. They want to see the data to support their decisions or support your recommendation. So how do we get all of that data harmoniously together in ALM to leverage the ease of reporting inherent in that tool? We do it through integration. It sounds simple, but it's not. And I'm going to show you a quick example of how TaskTop can help organizations tie together different tools. And this example is Application Lifecycle Management from Micro Focus and Tricentis Tosca. So let's take a look at it. Let's say you have a test automation team living and working out of Chennai, India. And this was my personal experience. They weren't using Tricentis Tosca in my experience. They were using Rational Functional Test at the time. It's an IBM tool. And we were using Quality Center. So there was a disjoint there. But let's just say for this example, they're using Tricentis Tosca, and you're stateside. You're the global regression testing manager or QA leader, and your team is in India, working in a different time zone, using a different tool. But all of your reporting is coming out of ALM. And you spend most of your day monitoring reports, monitoring execution runs, defects logged, coordinating meetings, providing updates to stakeholders, internal and external. Well, with it, TaskTop's advanced test management integration, you can now synchronize tests, test results, test evidence, everything between these 2 different endpoints to enable you having a centralized view, a test reporting view within one tool, and that's ALM. So that net result of having this ability is that your reporting out of ALM is now just as granular as your manual test reporting that you're used to out of ALM. And you can port everything out of ALM across the multitude of test automation tools. So this leads me to just a few different quotes, and as we know, you can't manage what you don't measure. That's sort of obvious, and the bottom line is the devil's in the details. And reporting is the lifeblood of most companies when making decisions. That's real-time reporting, not the snapshot point-in-time balance sheet reporting that we're used to. But to get to that live real-time reporting, you have to have the necessary underpinnings. And the underpinnings, as you witnessed and as I explained, really center upon the tool chain. Ensuring that your tool chain is integrated end to end is a necessary component of ensuring that you can report at the higher level. And if you're using Micro Focus ALM, which a lot of folks, if you're part of the Vivint community, are using, wouldn't this be nice to set up a dashboard where your analysis items capture both your automated test execution progress from your unified functional tests running, but also the Tricentis Tosca tests running, also the Selenium tests running, any automation tool that you decide to use, you can report on it out of ALM. And here are some common entity graphs that we see within ALM. And if you're a practitioner, you've probably set up all of these different graphs. So ALM allows its users to create these entity graphs. The most common types, the requirements coverage graph, the requirements summary graph, the test set summary graph, the defect progress graph, the defect summary graph, and defect aging. So in addition to the integration capabilities that I showcased between Tricentis, Tosca, and ALM, enabling technologies, value stream enabling technologies such as TaskStop allow you to synchronize bugs created in these tools. So in Tricentis Tosca, you can log issues, and other tools like Smart Bear, as an example, that's another vendor, you can log issues or bugs. So all of those can synchronize back to your tools such as ALM. If you're using ALM as your system of record for defect reporting, and those defect analysis items that your PMO creates and pulls into their dashboard, they want to report off of that. But let's say your application development team is using Azure DevOps to log unit level bugs, right? Because they're doing some semblance of unit testing. So maybe they want to log their bugs in Azure DevOps because that's what they're using, otherwise known as TFS. So you can synchronize those bugs back on over into ALM as defects, and those defects will show up in your overall reports. And you can also synchronize specific attributes of that defect, such as category equal or test layer equal unit. And therefore, you can slice and dice on that data accordingly within your testing in ALM. Okay, so let's wrap it up here with a quick summary of what we just discussed today. So it's been my approach from a transformational perspective to have balance between people, process, and technology, but don't forget about your tool chain and how that needs to tie together. It's also important to fully understand the statistics still show that up to 50% of testing remains manual today. A lot of this is rooted in fear, in my opinion. Leaders who make decisions put their pants on one leg at a time. They're emotional creatures just like everyone else roaming this earth. Fear of adopting too many tools, fear of not adopting the correct tools, fear of reducing manual testing and then missing critical steps with automated testing, that all factors into the decision not to move ahead with more manual or more automated testing. It makes sense to have the human touch because it's a fear mitigating measure oftentimes. So tools like TaskStop can help companies like yours eliminate some of that fear with a proven tool chain integration strategy to sort of tie things together and help you to monitor things in real time from a reporting perspective. And lastly, the manual reporting. Instead of having 4 testing coordinators employed full-time around the globe in your organization focused on Swiss Army knifing your reports, why don't you deploy their talents to coaching and improving processes? You know, reporting should be automated, but if your tool chain is not integrated, it's impossible to automate it. And the inefficient methods of reporting, they'll just never be solved. So, you know, I know this was a shorter webinar. We're approaching just over 20 minutes, and I know it's just after lunch for most of us here in the US. So hopefully I'll give you back some time in your day and you have something to think about here in terms of what makes sense from an end-to-end value stream mindset view of how can you enable centralized reporting within your organization with your existing investment in Quality Center and ALM, and still have the latitude to try out different tools. You don't have to marry yourself to other technologies. That's the beauty of having enabling technology in place. You can try things out, and if it doesn't work, you can dump it and move on to something else. You don't have to completely adopt something else. So you can tie it into your tool chain, see if it works, try it out, move on to the next if it doesn't. So that's really all I had to share with you today. I thank you again for your time. And I'm going to go ahead and turn this back over to Chris. Chris, go ahead and tell your audience about Vivid's upcoming events, and let's go ahead and get into some short Q&A, if that's all right.
That sounds great. Thank you very much, Matt. So briefly, while you're thinking over your questions to send into Matt about the TaskTop integrations and any lessons from the various engagements that he's had, we have two really great events coming up. One is the Portugal Vivid user group, and that is on June 27th. And then July 24th, we have in Germany test management with the Micro Focus product. I did not get a chance to use Google Translate on that, so I probably butchered it, and I apologize for everyone there. So we got some questions coming in. Certainly feel free to send more, but I'm just going to kind of roll through these in the order that they came in. First one up, can you use TaskTop to control the execution of other automated testing tools?
You cannot. So TaskTop doesn't, it's not designed to help control the execution of other automated testing tools. As you know, if you're using ALM natively integrated with UFT, within the test lab itself, you can control and schedule which automated test kicks off and the virtual machine and setting up the host machine and all that for the folks on the line who are familiar with that integration. But if you're using TaskTop to tie together other automated tools to ALM, TaskTop isn't designed to kick off the test per se. You still have to handle that within the tool itself. I think there might be some scripts that are being worked out by different vendors that you can add into ALM, but TaskTop's technology itself isn't designed to execute the scripts per se.
Not a problem. Thanks. And yes, we are a heavy user of the Lab Manager and ALM.net, and it helps make things a lot easier. I mean, it's not the only thing out there, but if you're an ALM customer, it works very, very well. Next up, can I use this dashboard integrated to CBTA? Unaware of what that is? Hopefully you know that tool set.
CBTA, is that a tool? Can you ask a clarification question to that?
I will ask back, and if the person who sent that in is listening, if you can just clarify what you mean by CBTA, we'll come up to you next. Oh, it's an automation tool from SAP. Sorry.
Oh no, it's so you're asking, does TaskTop integrate with CBTA?
How about I extend on it? They're saying yes. Let's take that in two parts. Does it integrate with CBTA, and or does it integrate with results out of CBTA?
It does not. We do not currently have a connector or an adapter for CBTA or SAP Solution Manager.
Okay, and I heard you mention a term that I've heard before with TaskTop. So for the benefit of our listeners, when you say connector, can you describe what you mean by a connector so that when that comes up, they understand what that means?
Absolutely. So TaskTop in itself is a Java-based application that's installed on a server, but within that platform, within the application, are purpose-built connectors. So with the 60 different best of breed products that we have connectors built out to, we've obviously looked at the API endpoints of those particular tools and created purpose-built connectors to handle two-way synchronization between that tool through our model-based platform out towards any other tool. So that's what really a connector is. Think of it as a purpose-built interface within our platform.
Awesome. Next on deck, I understand how to sync the data to Tricentis, but how would you do it for so far as all open source products like Selenium JUnit that don't necessarily have an application to sync with?
Yeah, so we support what we call a gateway within TaskTop Integration Hub, and as long as the other products that you're using support webhooks, we have the ability to consume information from those products and pass that on over into ALM. So anything that could be consumed, such as the execution status of a test, any information that is generated from that other tool can be consumed in an event-driven fashion through Gateway, which is built-in capability to TaskTop Integration Hub, and then route it off to any other product, whether it's ALM, that would be through the connector to ALM, or Azure DevOps, or any other tool for that matter that we support.
Cool, thank you.
Yeah.
Next, how does licensing work for TaskTop? Sure, it's difficult to talk pricing, but is it a plugin that's available with existing licenses, or how would someone go about getting that? And then I'll add on to their question, if you can discuss if it's based on the connectors you were mentioning, or if it's a different model.
Yeah. So pricing is set up in this way. So we have different tiers. We have a Pro Edition. We also have an Enterprise Edition, and we also have an Ultimate Edition. So how this works is as such. A lot of companies, most companies that use TaskTop are integrating three or four endpoints. And of course, we have companies that have, in the dozens of endpoints that they're tying together, from CI/CD tools such as Jenkins to PPM tools such as Clarity or even PlanView. So those types of customers that have the larger array of endpoints would choose our Ultimate subscription plan. And basically what you do is you pay a price per user per year. So how that works is as such. You would look at your different endpoints, and let's say as an example, you're using ServiceNow as your ITSM tool, you're using ALM, and perhaps you're using PlanView, and you're also using Azure DevOps. So that's 4 tools that we have in the mix, okay? Sometimes in organizations, you're going to have users that have accounts in multiple tools, right? You have John Doe within your company. He's going to have an Azure DevOps account. Maybe he also has an ALM account, and he has a ServiceNow account. So those only count as one user. That's how we look at things. We look at it across the board. We see where those users exist across the tools you want to integrate, and then we count up those users, and we have a per user price that organizations pay on a yearly basis in a subscription model. So it's one of those things, and at the end of the year, we would true up with our organizations to see where they're at, and we would adjust licensing as necessary. But again, so we have the Pro Edition, which includes up to 2 endpoints, and we have the Enterprise Edition. I believe it's up to 5 endpoints, okay? We also have Ultimate, which is unlimited endpoints. Speaking of endpoints, I'm speaking of tools. And then within Enterprise, you have capabilities to use 2 other key features known as Gateway, which is what I described previously for consuming event-driven information and passing that into different tools. And you also have the ability to enable what we call Enterprise Data Stream, EDS. And EDS is effectively TaskTop Integration Hub normalizing the data that's synchronized between 2 different endpoints. So in this example, between ALM and Tricentis Tosca, and what we can do is take that data that's been synchronized between the 2 different endpoints. Through Enterprise Data Stream, we can layer it into a database such as SQL Server or Oracle, and organizations often use this feature functionality to then report over top of that database with Tableau or Business Objects or any other BI or BO tool that you use to create more macro level reporting as well. That's if, the whole premise of the presentation today was saying that your source of record is ALM for your reporting. That's what your PMO would be using. But with organizations that might not have that strategy in place, they can build custom reports and use Enterprise Data Stream to collect and normalize the data into a database and then build reports out over top of something else.
Oh, great. And a subtext that I heard to it, and correct me if I'm wrong, is it's okay for different teams within an organization with an integration like this to be comfortable to have their own tool, because this seems to take some of that worry out of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the thing is, a lot of times, a lot of larger conglomerates that have adopted TaskTop, they're going through a lot of divestitures, didn't even pronounce that right, acquisitions, mergers and acquisitions. So companies are coming online and companies are going offline. So with that being said, these companies or these business units or lines of business that are coming online, they're bringing their own tools to the the playground, so to speak, and they might not necessarily want to adopt the standard tools that the mothership has said these are our tools, and they're saying, well, we want to use what we've been using for a couple of years that work best for us, and that's fine, because now you have a model in the middle where they can bring their tools to the party and just plug right into the model, and that's TestTop. And TestTop will take any information generated from those tools and either synchronize it to tools upstream or downstream, or use enterprise data stream to layer it into a database, and then you can report over it. And a lot of times program management offices leverage the EDS feature functionality to report on top of the data that's being normalized and put into these databases.
Very cool. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Next up, we have a question about is there the ability to get the test plan information for GitLab if they are storing their Selenium scripts there?
Is there the ability to get the test plan information from GitLab if they're storing their Selenium tests there? I would have to look at the connector specific documents for GitLab. We do have a connector for GitLab, but I'm not sure that our connector is built out to see the test plan information in GitLab. So I can't answer that yes or no today live, but we can certainly follow up. And if you go to tasktop.com and send us a message through live chat, somebody will be able to answer you right away.
Oh, sounds great. Next up, are there trial licenses that teams can use to try these tool integrations used in the groups?
Yeah, so how we do things at TaskTop is we encourage opportunities or folks that aren't quite familiar with TaskTop's technology to reach out to us, and we'll do a customized demonstration for your team with the tools that your team uses. So we have access to a large sandbox of different products internally, and then we'll take it to a next level and say, you know, it's one thing for us to show you how this works, but it's another thing for you to actually get your hands into it yourself. So when it comes to free trial licenses, we do what we refer to as solution engineer-led proof of concepts. You know, we're not going to just give you a free trial license and have you run off with it by yourself. Effectively, what we have is a program that we put you through, and it's no cost. And we'll install TaskTop on a server internally in your organization, and we'll spend the time. This solution engineer from internal will spend the time hand-holding and knowledge transferring information to you, one of the administrators within your organization, and you know, a larger audience of stakeholders who are interested in how easy it is to set up integrations between different tools. And we'll set it up for 2 to 3 weeks, and we'll allow you to evaluate. But before going into an evaluation, we often fully define the use cases of what we're trying to achieve together collectively, and we also put some success criterion in writing in terms of what you're looking to accomplish, what means success to you as an organization, and we prove it out together. And then you know, you can make a buying decision based on that. But as far as like just trial licenses, we don't offer that. But the proof of concept is as close as you can get to a no cost sort of evaluation, if you will.
Oh, that sounds great, and especially for myself in healthcare, where getting you access to our on-prem things can be difficult. It's nice to hear that you have that ability. So I'll be selfish and say that sounds quite nice. We have about 2 more questions. Again, if anybody else has questions, get them in. We have a little bit of time left. You mentioned talking about the integration of systems and the complexity. So obviously, it sounds like you have a lot of technical support available. But you know, what is your general observation of the difficulty level integrating, say, ALM to, say, another system?
Yeah, so the connector that we just enhanced, so our latest release of TaskTop version 19.2, involved a massive effort from our product management team to uplift the level of advancements from a test management perspective. So as we know, ALM, for the practitioners listening and myself being included in that picture, know that the hierarchical structure of ALM has its pros and cons. It's very useful for controlled test planning, design, execution, but there's many layers within a UI that you have to go into. So when you look at a test instance, you have to click through and then you pull up a test, the runs that are associated with that instance. And there's all these different layers and associations between different records that are generated within ALM. So imagine trying to figure out how to leverage the API that Micro Focus makes available for ALM and make
It's
sense of
not
all of
easy.
this. Yeah, I mean, that's where the technical complexity stems from. And figuring out how to take that information, consume it into a model within TaskTop, and then outwards to another system such as Tricentis Tosca in a manner that makes sense, because if you think about it, the different products on the market today, Azure DevOps being one of them too, or a TFS, there's Test Manager, and there's also a whole growing number of marketplace add-ins for Atlassian, Jira, and even Azure DevOps that focus on test management, test planning, test design, test execution, all built differently. So nothing is just the same, you know? So you have these advanced systems. When I say advanced, they're the ones that include many, many different layers. And then you have systems that try to keep it simple, and you only have a few different layers. So trying to figure out how to piece all these different systems together in a way that makes sense, because you never know what an organization is going to request. So with TaskTop, our goal is to accommodate the marketplace. We have 60 different built-in connectors to our tool and growing on a quarter-by-quarter basis. So the complexity really lies in understanding not only the current capabilities of a vendor, but also where the market is heading, and staying ahead of the innovations in the market, and working with our vendors to get early preview into the products that they're releasing and to enhance our connectors along the way.
Very cool. Thank you. We have a final question, and then we can wrap up. Oh, I lied. We have two final questions. So when you're bringing data into ALM, you were talking about reporting.
Mhm.
Is it just the metrics, or is the full detail of a test run brought into ALM from other tools?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So from Tricentis Tosca, we've advanced, we've improved upon the integration in that respect. So we're providing the full details of the test execution run. So the status of that test, whether it's passed or failed or not completed, in addition to the design steps. So what specific steps are being executed for a run? With other tools that we have, and going back to the connectors conversation, it all depends on what tool you're consuming information from. The example I brought up today was an example of a more advanced level of integration that we offer between two different tools. But for other tools, such as Azure DevOps, we can synchronize tests between, but sometimes the granularity in terms of the test evidence or the test steps is not something that we support out of the box. So these are things to take into consideration. Our connectors have different levels of capabilities, but we're super transparent about that. And if you were to reach out to us and get into a demo or a conversation, we'll let you know if our connector currently supports that or doesn't. And oftentimes, there's workarounds. And one workaround I want to speak to is and I'm speaking amongst friends here, so all of us use ALM, and we understand that the direct cover status within the requirements management module at the requirement level gives us visibility into that latest test execution run of a requirement, as long as you're tracing things together and you're disciplined in how you're creating those test plans and you're tracing it back to the requirement, and you're tying it all together really, and you're using requirements within ALM. Well, if you're using TaskTop to synchronize a requirement in ALM to another system such as Azure DevOps, perhaps you're synchronizing that requirement over to ADO as a user story. Well, you can add a custom attribute within Azure DevOps and call it direct cover status. And you don't necessarily have to synchronize tests between these two different endpoints. You can still get visibility from Azure DevOps into the testing progress that's happening within ALM through by means of that direct cover status attribute at the requirement level. But if you're so inclined to get the nitty gritty, the details, and some customers are, and that's why we've enhanced the integration capabilities between Tricentis, Tosca, and ALM first and foremost. And there's other tools on the market too that are being adopted quicker and quicker. And we're always looking at improving upon our connectors, and we take our customer feedback very seriously.
Very cool. And we have a final question. I do believe this is final. Is TaskTop a replacement for ALM Synchronizer?
It could certainly be. So ALM Synchronizer, I believe, only supports a few different endpoints. I haven't. Three, okay. I haven't touched it in probably about 5 years, but yeah, I mean, I've seen organizations, and somebody who had presented this morning, her name is Tina, and she is also a value stream architect here at TaskTop. She has a lot of experience with ALM Synchronizer, and she has seen organizations move away from that and start using TaskTop. That it certainly can be done. Obviously, the advantage of using TaskTop Integration Hub is the breadth of connectors that we support above and beyond those 3 endpoints that ALM Explorer or ALM Synchronizer makes available today within that tool. But that's just a start. I mean, you have to understand integration. We live and breathe it at TaskTop. So the connectors that we have within our tool are fully baked out. So they're the two-way synchronization, the routing rules, the artifact filtering, the capabilities to change a lever or move something here or there. It's all UI driven. So it's super intuitive, and there's also exception-based reporting built within the tool with the metrics to accompany it. So if you're interested to see how many artifacts are being generated in a specific tool, if you have an integration turned on to that tool, you could effectively use TaskTop to monitor your entire tooling landscape and understand what tools are being used and what are not being used. And whether you want to continue to make an investment in the tool, because now you have better visibility into what's being used and what's not being used, because you have those integrations in place and you're seeing what artifacts are being generated and what's not being generated.
Oh, thank you for that. Appreciate it. Well, Matt, we thank you for your time today. Certainly everyone look out for Matt at all your various conferences in the future, and stop by and see TaskTop. They are a very cool company. We appreciate you coming to us with Vivid to have this session. There's 2 links here, one to remind you Vivid Worldwide link, and then to TaskTop, and you can check out all great things about them. And at the end of this, there's going to be a short survey, so if you can take a moment and just fill it out so that we can better serve the community as we move forward. So Matt, thank you very much for joining us today. We look forward to hearing more from you in the future.
Thanks, Chris. I really appreciate it.
Thanks. Have a great afternoon, everybody.